Welcome to the video. This is going to be the most in-depth guide on hiring a virtual assistant for an Amazon online arbitrage business. This is going to be exactly how I hire virtual assistants for my Amazon FBA business, and I'm going to break down everything in this video from who I look to hire, the type of job posting I make, where do I hire people, how much do I pay them, and then the actual running up to the hiring process of like interviewing, going through a bunch of different applicants. I'm going to show you guys everything you need to know in this video. Before we get into it, if you guys haven't checked out the link in the description yet, I run a free newsletter where I post once a week on Wednesdays with advice just like this, helping you start or scale your Amazon online arbitrage business. So if you're looking for more assistance, definitely feel free to check out that link in the description. And let's go ahead and jump into this video. So how I hire virtual assistants for my Amazon FBA business. You guys can see I have a few different tabs here. Probably going to be a long video, but it's going to be very informative to help you find the exact person you need to help you scale up even more. So the first thing we need to talk over is when should you hire a VA? Because too many people hire the wrong VA too early, or they hire a VA in general too early, or they misplace them. A whole mess. I went through it when I first started. So I'm going to tell you exactly when you should start hiring for your first VA. So I would say look into your first VA when you hit right around 30K a month in revenue. Now this can vary. 20 to 30K a month is typically a good spot. However, before you hire a VA, you should definitely get onboarded with either a prep center, or you need to have your own spot where you have employees already fulfilling your prep work for you, because doing prep is the absolute lowest ROI thing to spend your time on. And then shortly after, you will want to hire a VA, because then you're going to have to also manage the prep center portal. So by having a VA help you manage that end, along with like all of the other admin responsibilities, is definitely going to help you actually utilize their time the most effectively that you can. So by 30K a month, you should have likely built a solid foundation that got you to this point, and you likely have a bunch of admin work you don't even realize you are actually doing at this point. Okay, so this is stuff like checking your gift card leakage. Anyone who has time on their hands can do that. It's literally just like check the gift card number, check the pin on the website, note how much gift cards we have, right? So just very simple stuff like that is things that you could be handing off to an admin, maybe having them submit inauthentic complaints, documents for your Seller Central, all that kind of stuff. I mean, there's so many things, like have your admin purchase your orders, which you'll want to make sure that they're a little bit more vetted, but so many things that you can free up your time that will allow you to focus on your business more, and that's going to ultimately drive your scale. Which leads me into my next point, is expectations for hiring and training a VA. So the first thing you guys need to be aware of is that hiring a VA takes loads and loads of effort and patience. It is not passive. You need to actively manage, train, and build a real relationship with your team. Okay, the hiring process itself takes about 1 to 2 weeks from job posting to making a final decision on who is going to be the right fit for the role. Training is going to take about 2 to 4 weeks depending on the role. So certain roles will take longer than others, and expect to spend real time walking them through your SOPs and systems. If you don't have any SOPs and systems built out yet, I would highly recommend that you at least start working on something so that when they are hired, they can be producing outputs for you actively. And then over time, as you see, this might be something good to put a VA on, this might be something good to put a VA on, you naturally give them more responsibility as you trust them more. And then leading into the next point is that the first 30 days are a trial period for these VAs. All right, so you need to treat it like a probationary phase to see if they're even a good fit before fully committing. Now, that doesn't mean to go and fire your VA after 30 days, because I don't want you to take that away from this video. And I would actually argue against that, because I'm telling you right now, the hiring process is like your prerequisite. You don't want to be doing your prerequisites a bunch of times over, because you need to get in the weeds with these VAs. So your first 30 days is just a good way to gauge overall, like not performance wise, but just how they are actually doing for you. Like, are they putting in effort? Are they trying to get better? And this is also a big reflection on you as a manager of them, to where you need to be self-analyzing and thinking about, did I give them everything that I could have given to help them become a better virtual assistant? All right. So just keep that in mind. If they're not even doing that well after your first 30 days, I really would never fire somebody until I have a good 2 to 3 months with them and I just feel like they are not working out. But I don't recommend firing VAs, because with the stuff I'm about to teach you on how to hire somebody, you shouldn't have to be firing people. All right. The goal is to get good qualified applicants to your listings. And then from there, we're essentially hiring the best fit for the team and for the role. Okay. So don't be trying to go on like a firing spree. It takes up so much time. It's not productive and it takes forever. And then you have to restart with a whole new VA. Okay. So strongly recommend hiring full-time over part-time. I used to hire part-time. I actually have a few people who work part-time for me. The thing about full-time VAs is that they're more committed, they're more reliable, and they're easier to build systems around, in my opinion, because if you hire part-time VAs, and you continue to scale and that person gets really good, okay, you kind of run into a bottleneck with their time that they can then put back into your business. So just hire full time, even if you don't have a full time schedule for them yet, you will naturally grow into the work. All right. Full time VA salary ranges from about, $400 to $500 a month, probably even more than that. So I would say just stick with a good 500 a month. That's baseline, and it's worth every dollar if you find the right person. Okay, don't be cheap with your money. If you must go part time, I'd expect to pay around 300 to 350 a month, but know that availability and dedication will be lower. But I would argue that a dedication is just what you make of it. I have great part-time VAs that work for me, so don't feel afraid if you're looking to hire somebody part-time. Offer it as a long-term role, right? So don't look at it as like, oh, this is just a part-time job, this is whatever. Because I've actually hired some of my best candidates from a part-time role with long-term opportunity. But again, if I would do it over again, I probably would just go straight for full-time because your applicant pool seems to be a little bit stronger there. But overall, you can go either way. Just be in mind that like it's okay if you're spending a little bit of extra money and you don't have a full stack of work for them, because once you actually start seeing they're, competent, you will start to find work very, very quickly. Build in incentives, bonuses, performance pay, or small perks go a long way in retention and motivation. So towards a structure to where they are incentivized to do the highest ROI activity that they are going to be doing for you. If you can incentivize that in any way, I highly recommend it. So like for me personally with my sourcers, I give them a commission out of every lead that they find, and I incentivize that through finding good products, not just from a spend perspective, but also from the quality of the products that they're finding. So we kind of build our sourcing commissions out in like different tiers based on how good the product itself is, so that they can already start to see the better type of products I find, the more I'm going to get paid. Or if you have a VA who is doing like your purchase ordering, so like this is the example we're going to go over in this video, to where your VA might be doing, your purchase ordering, and they essentially are buying orders for you. Maybe you give them a percentage of the cash back that they earn on those orders, because that's going to naturally drive them to want to place orders for you if they're getting a nice kickback out of that. So I always recommend incentivizing your VAs. That always goes a long way, and they actually view the job as something they can grow into and not just something that they're showing up and collecting a check from. So now that you guys have good expectations, okay, and a realistic time frame, the question here is, who should you hire? All right, so who are you actually looking to hire? So the first thing is, if you have no VAs, hire an admin VA first, okay? This is somebody who's going to handle the day-to-day operations like customer service, inventory tracking, order management, Amazon account health. They'll eventually probably be placing your orders for you, prep center management. I mean, there's so much that an admin VA can do that I'm like having a hard time even thinking of all the stuff, because there's literally so many things. But the 6 things that I have listed off there is, a great thing. So an admin is absolutely crucial, okay? Admin work is non-revenue generating, meaning you shouldn't be spending your time there once you're at the point where you can hire someone. It has to get done, but it doesn't directly make you money. Offloading it frees you to focus on sourcing and growth. All right. So this is really important when it comes to understanding why you're hiring this person, because I always thought in the beginning when I was trying to scale, I didn't have any time, but my naivety led me to believe that, well, everybody else has a sourcing VA, so that must be how they're scaling. Completely wrong. You need to buy back your time so you can actually then spend your extra time on more high leverage opportunity. And as you hire more and more people, that's kind of what you do with other people's time. So everything when it comes to building a business and hiring people is to work your way up to the highest leverage tasks that you can do and focus your efforts the most on those tasks, which for you is going to be sourcing, finding products, and getting better at the craft that actually generates you money. Okay, so hire somebody with no Amazon experience and train them your way. Also, I'd recommend hiring people around your age, similar energy, communication style, work ethic, personality type. Okay, I've hired a good range of people. Like I've hired somebody before who's like 40. I've hired people who are literally my age. I think a good sweet spot, because I'm 21, so I've found anywhere from 20 to 30s is a really good spot to hire. Pretty much everyone on my team is in their 20s and 30s, male or female, doesn't really matter to me, but just people who are naturally younger, I seem to mesh and bond with a little bit more, because we have similar interests. Like we like to go traveling and spending time, with friends and things of that nature. So I think hiring people that you can bond with is very important, because you are building a meaningful relationship, not just with this person, but if you hire a second person, now you have a team. So think in terms of, can I actually work and get along with this person? It goes a long way. VAs are not to be treated like scum. They're not to be treated like they're not people. Okay. Those are the type of people who hire a VA and fire four of them. If you're firing four VAs, then you are the problem, not your VAs. So do not hire people who you can't get along with and can't build a long lasting relationship with. All right. That's going to be who you should hire. So no Amazon experience, hire an admin, hire somebody who's a good culture fit. And now we're going to move on to step 4. Okay, so now I'm going to actually give you guys some tangibles in terms of like job posting, tips, tricks, and strategies, and everything like that. So when you're creating a job posting, first of all, to actually find a site where you can go out and scout for talent, you're going to want to go to this website right here, onlinejobs.ph. All right, I think it's like $70 a month. You're going to want to get that plan so that you can actually create a job posting. You're not just going to want to like search for talent. Reason why is simply because you want people to come to you, because you need to have some prerequisites and filters in order to get rid of really shitty applicants that are just applying to every job with the same script under the sun. So make sure that you get the $70 plan so you can actually start posting jobs. Now, when it comes to creating an actual job posting, all right, I have a few tips that I've learned just from like a year or two of hiring. I have a team of 6 VAs who work in the Amazon business, and then a 7th who's my editor who rocks. So she's watching this video right now. I've hired 7 people though over the course of literally 1 year. So I'm pretty qualified, I feel like, to tell you sort of like what works, what doesn't, and what you should actually be on the lookout for. So the first thing is going to be how you're wording your titles. So this is actually much more important than people think, because it's going to be the first thing that somebody sees when they're scouting for a job. So you need to make sure that that is actually enticing, but also not super niche. Keep the title broad. Okay. We want to be casting a huge net, and then as they come down the funnel, you narrow it down to a select few. So keep it clear and searchable, right? Like if you were going to search for a YouTube video, you're probably going to find the most regular looking title that just hits the search algorithm the most, right? You're not going to find like a really niche title on the first part of your algorithm. So think the same way when you're posting a job posting. So keep it clear, searchable, probably not something like virtual assistant for e-commerce business. Okay. So I kind of removed that example because I don't really like that. I don't like including e-commerce or Amazon FBA, or I don't like including these buzzwords because you're going to get a lot of people who already have experience. So keep it clear and searchable, as in like broad. So just do something if you're hiring an admin, like an administrative assistant and operations helper or something like that, right? Or like operations and administrative assistant. But that works a lot better than something vague or overly creative. So if you can take a look at my account here, okay, I'll actually show you guys the last 4 job posts I've made for different positions at my company. And notice how most of these people here, besides the video editor, because I needed somebody who already had the skill, notice how none of these mention e-commerce unless it's in like the actual description. Notice how in the title, there's no e-commerce, no Amazon FBA, none of that. Okay. It's just simply a full-time business operations associate, product research and business operations associate, and then product research and business operations associate, right? So admin operations associate, admin administrative assistant, right? Like just things that you're actually hiring for on a really broad level, because you want to see statistics like this to where you're getting a lot of hits, a lot of applicants, okay? Because that's going to allow you to actually start narrowing the searches down. So go broad, don't go super specific, okay? In the job specific, be specific about what the role involves. All right, mention the tools they'll use, the hours expected, and that it's a remote position. So to give you guys some insight here, we'll go ahead and use my most recent job post, which was where I hired a purchase order specialist. So essentially somebody who's going to be buying our orders. So what I did here, if you notice in the job overview, okay, I just start with a very simple intro line. We're looking for a bright, coachable, and hardworking beginner who wants to grow with our e-commerce business. No prior experience is required. Important to mention that. Training will be provided. Success in this role comes from problem solving, attention to detail, reliability, and flexibility to adaptive workflows. So I already give them idea as to what type of person I need for the job. And we are looking for somebody who is interested in a long-term role, who takes pride in learning and growing with us, because the role that I'm hiring for is not just a set it and forget it. It's very dynamic because we buy in very different climates and very different supplier, and all that kind of stuff. So essentially then I go on to list key responsibilities. So giving more, introspection about the job, right? So placing orders across various websites, ensuring order details like quantity, variations, shipping information, and payments are correct. Okay. And then I just list out a few other things. I say, who is this role best suited for? Who naturally operates with high standards and strong attention to detail. Okay. Next, I move on to who we are actually looking for. So we are looking for someone who has an ownership mentality, high personal standards, is outgoing and communicative. We don't want somebody who is just sheltered and won't come to us when there's problems. Speed and accuracy. We want somebody who can work quickly, but also, with accuracy. Pattern recognition so that they can start to build independence and ownership in their skill over time. Procedural discipline, attention to detail, and coachability. Okay. Next, I go on to list the incentives. So that's going to be like bonus qualities. Well, this will actually, so the perks is the actual incentives. For this specific job application, some bonus qualities that stuck out to us would be people who have access to multiple devices because it helps navigate cancels and things like that. And then the ability to connect to backup internet locations if needed during certain time sensitive ordering windows. Also, so that if we have orders that need done in a very small period of time, they can actually attend to them because their Wi-Fi is not out or anything like that. So those are just bonus qualities. That was kind of a nuanced thing for this particular job posting. But if you have any bonus qualities that you want, you can definitely list them. The next big part is going to be the perks. So this is where you're giving them a reason to actually apply to your job based on the things that you are discussing. So performance-based equity bonuses paid quarterly. All right. So this is essentially me saying that I'm going to give them a percentage of cashback, which is giving them a sense of equity in the role that they are fulfilling, right? A future career and earning growth potential. Okay. As they get better, as they take on more responsibility, I'm totally cool with paying my assistants more. They are entitled to that. Plan growth into a future full-time role as the company scales. Okay. So this is already a full-time position, but to start, I didn't have enough work for him to, start out as a full-time person, but I still am paying him full-time pay and just letting him know that, hey, we might not have full-time work right now, but once you are hired, you are a full-time employee to us. So give us some time. We'll work through some stuff and we'll go ahead and get you off on the right foot. A flexible schedule with defined deadlines and then paid training during onboarding. Okay. Very simple. Just list the perks. You don't have to get super in detail. Just let them know that they're actually going to be compensated and that they have a reason to actually come work for your company. And then how to apply. So this is a very important part. This is where you start actually weeding out a lot of applicants because this is where people are going to not follow directions, and that's your opportunity to get rid of the bullshit. So first, how to apply is on the resume. You're going to want to have them attach their most recent resume. Okay. If they don't do that, disqualify. Next, you're going to want to ask a redundant question. So I like to use favorite color. You can use favorite food, places you've traveled to, stupid stuff like that, to where it essentially is just an outlier question to get people out of your job, right? So share at the end of your application. Anyone who doesn't share their favorite color with me is not accepted for an interview, is not even accepted to anything after that. We just immediately disqualify them. And then only applicants who follow both steps will be considered. Okay, very simple. And then I note this is not a simple admin job. Each product has its own quirks, and you'll be trained to use a clear process to problem solve and become proficient when handling orders. If you're motivated and eager to learn, this role is for you. Okay, and another thing that I would recommend in how to apply is to actually use something like a Loom video. So when I used to hire for like a sourcer, what was really nice is I actually requested people to send me a 1 to 2 minute Loom video of them introducing themselves and a little bit of stuff like not related to like work. And it's essentially for me to like see who I'm about to meet with, so that if I can determine I'm not going to really mesh well with this guy or I don't want to really give this person a chance, I can just disqualify off of that. Now, anyone who follows directions, I always like to give a chance to, but being able to see who is actually about to show up to your interview is super nice before you even take the time to speak with them. So if I could recommend some extra things to put in the how to apply section, I would put something like send me a 1 to 2 minute Loom video just describing a little bit about yourself, or you can do something to where you have a Google form, which is going to be the example we run through in this video, to where essentially you say that they have to apply through a Google form, which means that they're going to have to then enter their name. And if they don't enter their name on the first question, you don't know who responded to the application, which could then obviously make it easy to disqualify people. So there's a few variations of how you can disqualify. I think the one that I would recommend for getting the most applicants is just something very simple like this, to where it's just a resume and favorite color. Okay. You kind of want to get as broad of a scope as you can because you're not looking to weed out everyone right now. You're looking to weed out about 50% of the applications that you're going to get that are essentially just copy and paste messages. So I'd recommend going with something simple like this. But as you start, hiring for maybe more advanced positions, or you've gotten comfortable with hiring, you can definitely start throwing in like something like send me a Loom video or apply through this Google form. Things like that can definitely be a great way to weed out some people. But again, remember the goal in the beginning is to just get rid of the 50% that don't follow directions. Okay. So moving on into this, qualities to look for, again, detail oriented, make sure that they're strong and, communicative, strong English communication, reliable internet, willingness to learn, proactive attitude. All right, so again, mention the incentives and perks using that filtering mechanism that I just discussed. And then again, this is optional, doesn't have to be a requirement, but I do think having a resume and a Loom video is like super nice, especially the Loom video. But you can also just use resume, favorite color, just something to qualify people who are not going to follow directions. All right, so that is creating a job posting tips and tricks. Okay, I had so many questions about what do I put in my job posting, what should I look for, how do I qualify people out. This was literally like, I wish I had this when I was starting. So you guys are, lucky enough to be seeing the ins and outs of how I actually made some of my job postings here. So then the next thing is going to be prospecting. All right, so now you have a job posting up, you're going to start getting flooded with applications. You can see in my inbox I still have over 60 messages right here, right? So this is like obviously a ton of messages. So the reason why we do this filtering stuff is to be able to like weed through people quick. So when it comes to doing prospecting, all right, filter applicants ruthlessly. So check for the trick question answer first. That is the first thing you're going to look for. Don't spend time like looking through their resume, reading the whole application. Look for the favorite color question. Look for the favorite food question. Make sure people are actually answering that deliberate, question there, because it shows if they can actually follow simple directions. All right. Anyone who didn't follow directions gets cut immediately. Then you can review Loom videos or resumes or anything like that of the following candidates. All right. So that's already how you filter out 50% of people right there. Next, send to your top candidates a Loom demo video showing them exactly what the role looks like day to day, and then have them book in an interview via Calendly. This tests their ability to follow a simple process and actually start to get a feel for what the job entails. So this was something that I started doing pretty recently after I had hired, I believe, my second VA. Once I started hiring VAs after that, I basically was giving them Loom demonstration videos of what their job is. So for this role that I hired for, my purchase order specialist, okay, we did our initial filtering process mechanism through a Google form here. So essentially I had them submit all of their, responses through a Google form. And I just kind of went into this with, just asking a bunch of different questions here. Again, you could totally just run the type of prompt that I gave here to where this will be enough filtering for you. But then once you have a sizable amount of candidates that you want to interview, essentially, what you're going to want to do is you are going to want to give a response to these applicants. Okay, so this is mine. Congratulations on being selected for the final step, the interview stage. All right, because you've already verified that you're going to want to speak to them. You've already verified that they can follow directions. So now it's time to do some interviews. Now, this 20 to 30 minute session will give us a chance to know each other and see if the role is the right fit. Okay, so during the interview, I will introduce a specific job role and responsibilities. So we're going to test their ability to kind of work through the role, conduct a mock buy sheet order. So this is just a mock-up scenario of what I'm actually hiring for. So for you, for example, you might make a video that's 5 minutes long and send it to them over how to check the balance of a gift card. Stupid simple, but I'm telling you, you're going to see some people who cannot do things like this, and that's going to be a great way to weed out applicants. Okay, so that's just an example. This is a very surface level video, so there's no need to worry. I always like to say there's no right or wrong answers, because there's not. I'm just looking to see how they problem solve. Do they give up really quickly? Do they not have, any sort of independence, right? Is it the type of person who I can see actually performing at this job? And then just ask some personal questions about themselves that are not work related, learn a little bit more about who they are, things like that. And then what I do is send them a quick 5 to 10 minute Loom video. Okay, this one was a little bit longer because we were hiring for a little bit more of a in-depth role, but I'll send them a Loom video, link it over to them, and that will be the first response they get back from me. All right, and then I note that this will explain everything they need to know for the mock-up situation. Be prepared to answer questions about the material during the interview. All right, and then I mentioned specifically, I will not answer questions about the video content prior to the interview, because this video interview, when it comes to this test, is to see who they are off the initial, video and test that I give them. I don't want to be giving answers out. I just want to see how they react to problem solving. And then I give them a Calendly link where they can book in their interview. Thank you, and I look forward to speaking with you. Okay, very simple. So when it comes to actually creating your mock-up scenario, I'll show you what I did for mine. So I essentially just did something very simple where I took a lead from our buy sheet and I just made a new tab. And then first in the Loom video, I described what the role is, give them some context, right? Don't just start explaining things. Give them context as to what the role actually is, what they're going to be doing, and then walk them through a very simple procedure of doing said thing for that role. So I first explain essentially what each of our column names mean here. Okay, I explain how to navigate this Google Sheet here, and then I run through a checkout. That's literally all I did, is I explained the tabs, I explained the job role, and I ran through a checkout. And then I had multiple different situations for the test to where I had them try a checkout with a coupon, try and check out without a coupon. What happens if the order doesn't go through? Things like that. And then I did that same test that I had given to them, I had done those same things again when we interviewed. Now, I obviously made it a little bit different so that they wouldn't just be copying what they did in the interview, or not in the interview, but in the Loom video. And some of the things I added were completely new just to see how they would problem solve. Okay, so this is a basic example of like a mock-up scenario to where I just made a Loom going over the role, responsibilities, and then how to do something very simple to see how they do on the call. Naturally, they're going to struggle. That's part of it. That's actually like what I've seen the most is that people do struggle, but you might be able to find people who actually excel naturally at said role, which might be really good candidates to take on, or people who you can see clearly have a bit of problem solving and thinking and a bit of independence when it comes to actually doing their job. Okay, so going back to here, that is essentially the prospecting process. So again, is going to really help get some qualified interviews going and give you an idea of who you're speaking to. Now on the actual interview, so you've made it to this point, so congratulations. It's exciting because you're one step before you're going to be able to hire somebody. So what I recommend first is you interview at least like minimum 3 people. I'd recommend a healthy spot is like 5 to maybe 7 candidates. 5 is a pretty good number though. Gives you a pretty good idea as to like the type of people that you're going to want to hire and then like who you want to choose out of the applicant pool. So in the actual interview, I'd structure it into 2 sections. So the first half is going to be personal questions to understand who they are. And then the second half is the mock-up scenario and test how they think and problem solve. So in my actual interview structure, you can see this here. I have an interview breakdown for this specific position. So first 5 minutes are just introducing and explaining some stuff, right? So small talk in the beginning. Next 10 minutes, I'm just essentially getting to know them. Who are they, right? I have some basic questions, and then from these basic questions, I branch out into the answers that they give me. So, if they say that the hobbies they like to do is like working out, going to the beach, things like that, I'll ask, oh, like what's your like workout split? Like what do you, like to typically hit? Are you like currently dieting like super hard? Are you going really hard in the gym? Like just, yeah, again, opening up, trying to get an idea of their personality, seeing, how they correspond to just different questions, and trying to remember these things for if I do hire them, because it's always good to know your people. So that's going to be the first half of the interview, right? Just going through some background, hobbies and personal life, mindset and personality questions, and then additional questions that I feel are necessary. All right. And then the next section is going to be the actual exercise that you are, kind of seeing how they do. Okay. So I have a few different scenarios that I gave. This took roughly about 10 to 15 minutes. And essentially for this position, I shared my screen and just let that person who I was interviewing walk me through how they would do their process for buying that product. So I had a few different scenarios laid out and I said, hey, take me through A to Z on how you would, navigate this product. How would you buy it? So a first scenario we did was just a very simple order. Okay. Rule follow, just follow the notes that I have listed here. So we had some very simple notes like add 10 units to cart, at checkout, use a code, pay with card, and send to address. Okay. Very simple, very, very self-explanatory. All right. So that's how we kind of did that. Second one was ordering with a coupon. So I had a separate one where we had a coupon and I wanted to see, will they apply the coupon? Will they actually attempt to, use what is in the notes? Okay, so walk me through how you would complete this order. And then the next thing is a problem solving scenario. So what happens if this coupon doesn't work? So in this part, I didn't give any context in that Loom video, but I want to see now, I'm going to test this guy's problem solving. I'm going to test, hey, can he actually kind of think for himself instead of just like immediately not trying? Or is he going to at least flag a member of our team, right? What is this person going to do if things don't go as expected? All right. And I'm looking for, just him to actually try again, document the issue, communicate, do a little bit of independent thought. All right. And then I did another scenario where we did a order stoppage. Okay. So let's say you attempted to finish the checkout, but the website will not allow your payment method to go through. What would you do? So my last 2 scenarios here, I think only like 1 to 3 are really necessary. Just depends what you're hiring for, of course. But just a few tests in the actual interview is going to be a great way to get them to open up and start thinking critically. And I recommend you throwing in at least a couple curveballs, maybe 1 to 2 curveballs like I did here, to where they're not ready for an answer, but they're just going to have to wing it. And you kind of just get a feel for like, all right, does this person have any independent thinking, and are they, naturally going to be good at this stuff? And am I going to obviously work with them well? Okay. And essentially that is like the entire interview process that I like to do. I like to get a personality feel first and then test their ability to actually do the role second. Okay. So if we go back into here, I like to keep the interview to 30 minutes max. You'll know within the first 10 minutes, most likely, if you're already meshing well with somebody. Okay. The rest is just sort of feeling them out, seeing if they're intelligent, things like that. Personal questions, right? Asking about their background, what they're looking for, why they applied. I love asking, why did you apply to this job? Because it tells me the right type of people who are applying to this. I want to do that for my future job postings. Okay. And then just mock up scenarios. All right. So that's going to be the interview process. And then the final process of actually going out and hiring virtual assistants is going to be the hiring and onboarding. Okay. So congratulations. You've probably hired your VA at this point if you're on to this step in the video. So when it comes to actually onboarding that person, what do I use for communication? What do I use for task tracking? What do I use for paying them? So everything is listed here. So the first thing is I use Discord. You can use Slack as well for daily communication. It's free, organized with channels, and keeps everything in one place. Way better than email or texting. All right. So just use Discord. Super easy. Most of you watching this probably already use Discord anyways. So just use whatever you're familiar with. You could use Telegram or whatever the case may be. All right. Just something you can talk to your VAs through. Send them your username immediately after you hire them so you can get them off of online jobs and you guys can actually start talking to each other one-to-one and start working, pretty soon after. Next is going to be to record all SOPs and training videos with Loom. All right, so you're going to want to install the Loom software if you do not have it already. Short screen recorded videos, your VA can rewatch at any time. Builds a library that they can reference instead of asking you the same questions over and over. Now, that doesn't mean you're not going to take calls with them. In the beginning, you guys should be getting on call a ton. All right, so like when I hire somebody, I actually do a week-long sprint of calls. Like, no kidding. I did when I hired my sourcers. We had a 1 week training period where it was every single day that they were available to work. We did a call over a specific concept when it came to sourcing. Now, that might have been overkill, but I wanted to connect with them as soon as possible so that they could already start working and start producing something. I'm not looking for crazy output. I'm looking so that they can start to get better over time. Okay. You don't want to just be giving your VAs SOPs and then saying, here you go. VAs need to be told what to do. And that's with any employee. Okay. That's not just with virtual assistants. That's with anyone who's starting something. You need to be a leader. You need to tell them what you expect, what you want, and then you need to show them how to actually get to doing those things for you. Okay. Even with great systems that I have now, guys, I still have to get on my VAs to be like, do this, do that, do this. Okay. Like people need to be told what to do. That is how humans are conditioned to act. All right. Next is going to be using 1Password for sharing credentials securely. In the beginning, don't send your passwords over chat. As you trust them more and more, you can be, a little bit more flexible, right? I don't obviously just like blatantly give my passwords to stuff, but they do like use some of our, business cards to purchase inventory and things like that, which I don't mind giving them access to because I do trust these people. You just need to get that initial verification and trust. But I love 1Password because it stores all your passwords that you use for like retailers. So if like you have a purchase order specialist, like what I did, they're going to need logins for your account. Same with your cashback accounts. And you don't want to just have that in like a big Discord channel. Get 1Password. It's $20 a month. It'll save you a bunch of time and just make everything a lot easier for you. And then for payments, you're going to want to pay your VA through Wise. Lower fees, fast international transfers, and your VA gets paid in their local currency. Okay. Wise is super good. Been using them for like over a year. And they're great for payments and everything like that. And then past that, guys, you really just need to tailor your onboarding structure and like the tasks you want your VA to do to whoever you're hiring for, right? So I always recommend trying to start with the most basic stuff. Let them actually prove themselves. Let them start to learn just the basics of your business. For example, my first day when I onboard people and we hop on call, it's literally just a day of explaining the business model from head to toe. Like, not getting too specific into like things that don't actually play into the role that they're hired for, but just explaining how the business model works. Give your people context as to what it is they're working for, and give them your goals, give them your vision, give them all that kind of stuff. It helps build culture early on, and it helps build a lot of clarity. Okay, that's like my first day of onboarding, and then after that, we're just doing calls for like a week straight, and essentially just trying to make sure that they can handle different scenarios. They have an actual framework and a day-to-day workflow. That's a big thing, is getting them structured early on and then explaining within that structure how to do their job. And then past that, it's like constant feedback. So the next weeks, months, all that stuff ahead, it's a lot of feedback. Like with my sourcers, for example, we were doing 3 Loom videos a week, and I was just trying to see their process. I was watching their Loom videos. They were an hour long. I did that with 2 people for a month straight. And the reason why is because I want to see if there's something I can catch early on to fix it and correct it. Now, you probably don't need to do that. That's overkill. A Loom video a week would work, but check in on your people. people, okay? Because VAs are not just going to be autonomous. They need assistance, they need help, and they are just a direct reflection of you and your, attendance to their needs. So that's going to be everything when it comes to how I hire virtual assistants for my arbitrage business. I almost guarantee this is the most in-depth guide on YouTube with good advice and more like in-depth details about how to actually hire somebody with all of like, the sauce that I shared in this video here. So I really hope you guys did enjoy this video. It was meant to be very thorough and to hopefully answer some of the questions that you have when it comes to the whole process. And yeah, that's going to be everything for this one. So again, sign up to the newsletter if you guys are interested in starting or scaling your Amazon business, and I will catch you in the next video. So until then, peace out.